Welcome to our first official Complimentary Angles podcast with ESC Region 11. Hashtag R11 Math Now. My name is Michelle Green. I'm the elementary math specialist at the Service Center, and I'm super pumped that you are listening to our podcast today.
Me too, Michelle. I'm looking forward to this. I think we're branching out into new areas, and so this is really exciting for me that we're starting something new and something we've never tried before.
Well, my name is David Henson. I'm the secondary math specialist, and I'm very shy and I don't like to talk a lot. So this is going to be a real stretch
Come
for
on,
me.
David. Tell the truth, David.
I am telling the truth. I am so shy. So no,
don't believe
I'm looking
folks.
forward to this too because I really want to enjoy just having a conversation about common things and popular things going on in math. We all have different environments going on, and this is a great opportunity to share.
Yeah, and that other voice that you heard chime in, that is Faith Swope. Faith Swope also works at the Service Center, and some of you may be more familiar with her. But Faith, tell us a little bit about what's your role at the Service Center these days.
Well, right now I am a team lead, and what that means is that I try to organize people and their systems and what they're doing in the center. But mainly these two people are part of my team, and I think they're fantastic, and we're gonna have a great time.
So we are the math team
at Region 11.
So last week we started a Twitter slow chat where we would post questions one every other day and just give people a chance to respond to them. The very first question that we did was this one. What's your angle on students using Google on an app like Photomath to complete their assignments or assessments? And then we just waited to see some of the responses.
So one of the angles that was posted on Twitter to this particular question was it talked about how these are tools. They're tools that students and parents can use to calibrate the understanding of the concept. When the students come home and they're working on their homework or they're working on projects, Photomath and Google are used as a way to help the parent and the student kind of see if they're on the same page of understanding of what the assignment is asking for. This particular person also talked about how it's a way for students to unravel the math and to begin to evaluate the solutions.
Well, Michelle, what would you say to someone who, I know there's a lot of teachers out there and that, they're struggling with this idea of students using apps to get their answers. To us, who maybe from a different age group, it seems like cheating. We gave them an assignment. We're expecting them to use their knowledge and think for themselves, and they're getting the answers from an app. What would you say to them?
Well, I would say that I wouldn't say it's cheating. I personally think that it's a way for students to see if they're on the right track. Maybe they're stuck in how to approach a problem. And so if they use like photo math or something that they can plug in the equation and they see the solution, then what I think students can do is begin to think about, well, why does that solution work? So maybe I need to, as a teacher, layer in something a little bit more of what to do when I get the answer. How do I know that that's right? What were some of the steps? So maybe there's some follow-up questions or explanations that can go with it. And I think if you add that layer in, then it wouldn't be cheating, because then the students have to show that they understand what's happening in whatever that said problem is, whatever the process is. Why does it work? What makes sense about it? I also think that if it's just an equation that only has a solution and that's all you're asking students for, then I would say, yes, that could be considered cheating. Because if I'm just looking for the answer, then I got the answer however I could get. It doesn't show that I understand anything. And if I'm just counting the solution as correct or incorrect, then yes, I would say that would be cheating. But if I'm asking for students to go a little deeper with the thinking and what's happening in the problem, then I think it can actually guide students to see if the way that they're approaching the problem, if it's working for them. So in that case, I don't see it as cheating.
I think part of the problem is, though, that the kids aren't doing the thinking, that they're just using the app and plugging the things and getting the answer and writing that answer on their paper. And so then the teacher gets the homework. Maybe the students get a good grade because they got the answers right. You know, especially if I'm using something that's grading or scanning their responses to get the grade. So how do I know that they actually put any thought into that question?
Well, Faith, I'm going to push back on that in one regard, because I'm going to say that every math teacher I've ever worked with over my years has said the same thing: show your work. So the nice thing about apps like Photomath is that they do show step-by-step procedures, but they only show one way. Now, you know, I'm going back to the original question here, is talking about a way for students and parents to calibrate. You guys have talked about students and so far, but what about the parents here? The parents, especially in upper level maths, they aren't getting the support to help their kiddos. We're asking them to, in our current environment, to be there to help check their work. If they, you know, went to college and took college algebra, that's great. But if you have a kiddo that's taking algebra 2 or pre-cal, that may be past what they've ever learned. So they're not going to be able to help. So are we going to ask them to go pay for a tutor or try to go online and do Khan Academy and hope that their kid can bridge the gap? Or can we get this free app that can give their child a step-by-step process to solve it? Now, it may not be the most efficient. It may not even be the most unique, but it is a step-by-step process to get kids and parents help when they need it.
So what are you saying, David, that the parents were the original Photomath? And so that, I mean, seriously, they're similar in that they're both a tool.
Matter. I think that Photomath is meant to be a tool, or our products like it are meant to be a tool so that when the parent can't help anymore, they have a resource.
But it's still fulfilling the same role, right? So whether the parent tells the student how to do the work, or the app tells the student how to do the work, the student is still not the one doing the work. So how do we get around that?
Well, I'm going to chime in on the parent side, because I do have a high school senior that is in pre-cal at this particular moment. And some of the work, especially in this remote learning learning environment that she's currently in, she's in person, but she's still working through the course through Canvas as she's in class. And so a lot of her problems, a lot of her work is coming through either videos or just discussion boards in the learning management system that they're using. But sometimes she asks for help. And I honestly, I'm elementary, so to really think from the perspective of pre-cal, that's a challenging thought for me. So being able to have some resources that I can pull from, and I'm glad you mentioned Khan Academy, because that is a great resource as well. Now, thankfully, her teacher does place videos into the Canvas that also helps. But what happens is we take a look at it, and as a parent, I'm able to look at the process of what's going on and see if I can help wrap my head around it so that I can help her to kind of evaluate where she's at. But what's really crazy about this is that you talk about kind of how parents helping the child may be considered cheating. And prior to last night, I probably would have agreed with that. But last night she had an assignment that was really, really pushing her thinking. And so I asked her, hey, why don't you write down the questions of where you're getting stuck? And when you go to class tomorrow, then you can ask, specific questions, and your teacher can guide you. Like that's what your teacher's role is to help support your thinking and to help you get unstuck. And she's an introverted kid, and she's super quiet. And she said, Mom, that's hard for me to ask questions. It's hard for me to bring up a question, especially when everybody has their headphones in and it's really quiet in my class. And I know my other classmates are concentrating. So I'm nervous about asking questions. So I'm just asking you because I don't know how to ask a question out loud. And so then I started thinking, wow, okay, so as a parent, I'm helping her, but I have to make sure that I'm helping her with the thinking. So asking her to bring her notes and let's look at these other resources, because thankfully her teacher doesn't just have her coming up with just an answer, but I would be stuck if I didn't have some of these resources. I would say on the parent side as well. So I don't know. Either one of y'all have that experience with either one of y'all's children? Because I know, David, you have a high school senior as well, and Faith, your kids have all graduated.
I'm editing that information out. That is setting our ages on blast.
We're connecting with our audience.
Well, I think that's what's great about the three of us is we all have a different perspective. I mean, isn't that what we're all complementary angles that we're trying to say is that we each approach things from where we are in our life at the moment. So,
okay, let's go into the next question. Question 2 that we put out last week. What's your angle on parents or family members helping students complete their assignments? But we're going to look at this one from the lens of elementary. So the first response, Michelle, if you'd like to read that for us or summarize it.
Well, this particular response has to do with maybe parents taking over for their children, that they see that sometimes parents do a lot of the telling or quote unquote holding the pencil for their students or for their child. We see this a lot on the elementary side when math comes home that they call new math. And when the new math, and I'm putting air quotes around, which I know you can't see in this podcast, but when they see this quote unquote new math come in, a lot of times parents want to maybe just tell them how they learned or how they did it versus helping the students with what the assignment is or what the learning is that the teacher is working on currently. So sometimes the parents in that case don't always help the students move forward with their learning, and they could help students get to the solution faster, which I think that would lean on the side of maybe being a little too helpful for our students and kind of enabling our elementary students to not do as much thinking as they are capable of.
Michelle, you bring up a good point. One of the replies we got to that response was really talking about asking your students better questions. So instead of being the checker of their work, ask them about how they're thinking about the problem and what made them decide that on that solution so that you can really see where the error occurred or where their thinking went astray from the topic that they're working on.
One of the concerns that I've heard and seen is when teachers give assignments to go home, they're not exactly certain what they're assessing when it comes back. Whose work am I really assessing? I just think of the popular video where you have on one as a split screen where on one side you have a person using the standard algorithm to multiply two-digit numbers, and on the other side they're using an area model, and it's meant to belittle the method. But the sad part is the defense of that is the area model is something they can use repeatedly over the years, all the way up through algebra and algebra 2. So this dogma about, well, my way is the right way, is really difficult when we send stuff home.
I will say that to kind of go back to the question it asked, like, what's the angle on parents or family members helping students? And I will say that I love when parents and their children are able to have these conversations. I love that work comes home and it elicits these great discussions because then it involves the entire family. So I do love that this is even a great question to ask. What I would just love to see is the parents just push back on the students thinking just a little bit more and refrain from helping them just get done with the homework.
For those of you who don't know what photomath is, we're going to call photomath the new villain of mathematics. It's the one that people seem to put out there as the most, but I can tell you this from personal experience with working with kids. There's photomath, there's Math Papa, there's Google, where you can literally copy the entire word problem and paste it into a search bar, and it will come up with the answer because it's somewhere out there in the universe. So these levels of technology are there. So what the means is what we have to do as educators is we have to adapt. These are tools, but they're also, like all tools, they can still be misused. So
how do I adapt them without making extra work for myself? So how do I, it's, I have a lot of grading to do, or teachers may have a lot of grading to do. And if I'm trying to do new things, sometimes that takes a lot of grading, time to grade. So how can I kind of make it work for my benefit, but in a way that doesn't make me spend long hours grading?
Well, that's the most, probably the most difficult part is if you're looking to make grading quicker, then go out, get a multiple choice Scantron, give them the old school multiple choice questions, and when they come back, run the Scantron, you're done. And nice thing is you can use that on any of those current systems. You can do it on Google Forms, you can do it on Quizlet, you can do it on Quizzes, Kahoot, all of that. You can make it easy on yourself and not understand a single thing of where they missed and why. Or if they guess, that's the worst. If they guess right and you have a false sense of positive that they understand it and they really don't. Or we can use it. There, especially in secondary math, there are several ways to do the same type of problem. If you, for instance, are doing binomial multiplication, if you take an algebra in North America in the last 50 years, you know the term FOIL. You may not remember what it's for, but you know FOIL, first, outer, inner, last. That is an algorithm that helps you organize multiplying two binomial polynomials. If you scan it in an app like Photomath, it doesn't do FOIL. It does an entirely different method, which is valid. It works. It's actually double distribution, but it works. So FOIL is something that the app won't do. So like if you give out 10 problems that require binomial multiplication and you see coming back literally all of it double distribution, when they get you just need to have that conversation. Hey man, when you get to a test, that app is not going to be there anymore. So now they're going to be asked.
Well, I think it is going to be there, David, because we have asynchronous students. We have students doing work asynchronously that have they have everything at their fingertips. So I don't know that's true, that won't be there when they have a test, because I'm taking a test asynchronously.
Well, you can go old school. Here, if there are 4 different methods to solve a problem, you have 4 problems, show me one each. Photomath will help them on 25% of the test.
So one way of getting around the Photomath issue is to have them show more than one way. What do you think, Michelle?
Well, I'm listening to you y'all use very big math secondary words. But I'm just thinking about how they could use the compare and connect strategy, how teachers could really leverage that piece about how they can take this solution and then you have to show another way of coming up with the answer and then comparing, or go ahead and give them the Photomath look. Hey, I've already worked this out on Photomath. Here's the response. I want you to look at this. I want you to work out your answer and I want you to compare what is the same, what is different about these two solutions. I think a good workaround to anything that is searchable, Google, even Photomath, or any other apps out there that will help students with their with the answer part. I think if we ask good questions and we know what it is that we want from the questions, then I think we can leverage what's happening in these resources or these tools to really make it work well for the students. Because that's what we want. We want to equip our students to be able to use things that's going to help them, but we want to move them forward in their learning as well. So I don't know. I was just kind of thinking about, as y'all were talking, I was just thinking about elementary too. I was thinking about the calculator and how I can plug in, 4 times 5 is 16. And if I only know that 4 times 5 is not 16, 4 times 5 is 20. So how the calculator, when I first started teaching elementary, the calculator was like a big no-no. I find with students, what I hear from students is that when they resort to having to Google something or research something or try to find, because I can also pull up an online calculator on Google and type in answer if I needed to, and it would give me the solution. But I find that what they said, that when they use that when that is their solution process, is when they just don't understand the concept, when they don't know what else to do, but they're too afraid to put in a wrong answer because they don't want their grade to plummet. They resort to the only thing they know that can at least appease the situation for the meantime. So I think about that. I think about students that just don't want to get it wrong. So they figure out a way to get a right solution. And I think that a lot of students really are hopeful that it's just a temporary thing. It's just a temporary way of getting to an answer. But I think what students are really telling us when they resort to this type of strategies of letting something else do the thinking for them, whether it's the parent, whether it's another family member, whether it's a tutor, or whether it's some piece of technology, is it's really telling us a bigger story, that there's something in the learning that they're not grasping. And as a teacher, I need to know what it is. So what kind of questions can I ask to help me figure out where is the application confusion, where is the misconception? Because if I'm having a lot of students resort to these types of things, then I need to look and go, okay, how can I help them trust themselves as mathematicians better than trusting somebody else or another piece of technology to help them? Because I want to build their confidence as mathematicians as well. You know, like students can't use the calculator because it tells them the solution. And I had to really stretch myself to think beyond that mindset. And also, how could I use the calculator to my students' advantage and to help them with the understanding of whatever concept they were trying to do. But what do you think, Faith? What are your thoughts?
Well, I think you have kind of hit on the nail on the head, because, and David, you were talking about this earlier as well. So it's like, it is a tool. And so it's about using the tool to its best advantage. And David, you had a really good analogy earlier. Would you share that analogy with us?
Everything we have in math, every piece of equipment is tools. And tools, by their very nature, are designed to do a particular job. If I was going to try to put a screw into a piece of wood, I'm not getting my sledgehammer. If I wanted to paint into a corner, I'm not going to go out and grab the largest brush I own. I'm going to try to find something to fit. So we as craftspeople need to be more specific on when we use it, or at least creating situations that it's usable or not usable. For instance, Photomath doesn't work on word problems. And if you're giving them a word problem, make it unique. The number one way to stop a kid from scanning through the interwebs to try to find the answer to your word problem is make your own. And even if you take an existing one and change the numbers, that solution is no longer there for them. So there's lots of ways that we can take small adjustments to what we have and basically either make the tools obsolete or leverage them, like Michelle said, and compare them to another way, which is higher order thinking to begin with.
I'm still worried about the teacher and the grading. Do you guys have any solutions for that? Like, how can I use a multiple choice scenario where I'm going to save some time grading, but still get to this idea that you're talking about?
Well, one of the responses on Twitter kind of addressed that. They talked about how if you're designing a multiple choice assessment, that you can add the justification to it, which isn't going to make the grading process faster, but it will give you the data that you need and maybe reveal any misconceptions that students may have, or show you that the students are understanding at a faster rate of the concept and that you may be able to move forward to whatever comes next in the unit.
Well, I was thinking, instead of having them do Photomath, what if we give them problems and say, go use Photomath to learn how to do it? To use Photomath as an instructional tool. And then ask them procedural questions afterwards. And that would be, so instead of you're making the tool a part of the learning process. I think I've seen that where a person, that's what they, pre-COVID, they had just straight mathematical problems around the room, like 10 of them. and then said, okay, take your Photomath app, go scan the problem, see how to do it step by step. And for your notes today, I want you to write down step by step. That was their lecture. So as the students were doing that, walking around, the teacher was able to go around and say, oh, why did they do that? So it turned the instruction, it turned it around. It made Photomath an instructional tool where the kids can do it. And then when they got all this done, they asked some questions like, well, how do I do that? Man, that seems awful long. And that's when the teachers would show alternative methods that were different. They did the same, they essentially were the same mathematics, but they were different. They were shorter. All of the jargon made sense then because the kids had a baseline understanding of how to do the basic problem. And the cool part was, so if the kid goes home and they're trying to do the work and they can't remember the other alternate ways the teacher showed, they still had something in their back pocket. They still could get step-by-step help that they needed.
I love the idea of involving the students in the process, involving the students in the lecture, letting the students bring the questions out, like letting the questions surface because of the students and where they're seeing things versus where I'm telling them they're going to get stuck. So I love that activity and that idea, David, that you shared. I think teachers, that would be a really, really engaging task.
I want to talk a little bit more about equity because I feel like we've talked about it, but we haven't really defined it. And I think one of the things that we've been talking about this whole time is this idea of access. So we have parents who can help. Some students have parents who can help. Some students don't. And this tool does provide some equity, or tools like this provides equity to students that may not have that advantage of having a parent that be able to support them in their learning, if we get past whether it's cheating or not cheating, or once we get past that idea, that it's really about support and helping, being there to help the students as they need it. So this is a free app. There are a lot of free apps that do that, and it does kind of level the playing field with that access piece. So I like what you were saying is that we have to learn how to use it in a way that helps us. So we're smarter than the kids, right? We have to outsmart the kids in this. And so if we use it as a tool that supports the learning and can push their thinking farther, then that's how they'll use it. If we try to deny them use of it, or get mad if they use it, or say they can't use it, then we're just actually aiding and abetting some of the problem, because they're going to do it, right? Kids have been cheating since the beginning of time or since the beginning of school anyway. And they'll unfortunately, they'll continue to find ways, because it's really their way of bucking the system, right? Finding ways to get around what the teacher wants you to do. But we can at least give it our best effort and attempt to say, hey, there's a better way to think about this, a better way to learn, a better way to move forward in our thinking.
That's all we have time for today. It was a great conversation, and I hope you have a chance to come visit us later. Follow us on Twitter at #R11MathNow as we go ahead, and next week we begin our new slow Twitter chat of What's Your Angle. We're going to be looking at some really interesting topics. I would invite you to attend. Look for the upcoming Complementary Angles podcast that we're going to be having in early December. I hope that you've had a great time listening to us and being a part of the conversation. Thank you very much, and have an awesome, awesome day.